Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Barrera. Today in Thunder Seed Therapy Stories, Jennifer Barrera. Jennifer online also. You have probably seen this on Facebook, some perhaps live, and some in other areas and in other countries. Today I will be talking about story. Whenever we think of a story, it has a beginning, a middle, and end. That's what we learn in school, right? A lot of people, whenever they go to school, they kind of give you this overall perspective that things have a beginning and an end. Otherwise, it's ongoing, and that's most probably your life. So if you have a life, then it's ongoing, and I have a life, so we have an ongoing story. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that doesn't start very good, right? It's not a good one because we made it that way. So imagine you have a daughter. So you're a mother and you have a daughter, and her daughter is a thoughtful person, but then she turned against you, right? And she faces you and says, "You person garbage. You're such a garbage in society, in the world, in every religion, in every sense of humanity, you're such a garbage." Imagine you say that and you also trashing and threatening their own humanity, their own religion, their own sense of well-being, their own, self-mechanism also. I believe a daughter as such would be very angry to do that, right? I don't think people go and just randomly do that. So there's a chain reaction here. There's a constant consequences. To make the story very fast, whenever there's a fiction, whenever it's not true, it is always easier to address it. When it is true, we have to dismantle everything, every particle that makes a human being. Everything that makes them happy, everything that makes them unhappy, every perspective that we have on psychiatry, and every truthful aspect that applies in psychiatry. Many people that create don't need to have this canvas and background in psychiatry. And I do say canvas because sometimes it's almost like they're painting, right? But you don't need it. You're not going to be the one requesting that. But if you do, then it is a matter that you have to continue in that direction once you're doing it, right? So these are psychiatric tools and notions. So these notions are applied. So I must say that in order to make things happen, I would have to say that the mother would have to cherish that she had a daughter, also the daughter, and then truly go into the word views, what happened, right? We say that sometimes in a sense of concern, and then you have people that make it funny because there's things that happen. You're like, what happened, and it's not that big of a deal. But whenever there's a truth behind all of this, we want to address it. And people say address, and then some people really go into this mental. You want to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself unless it's a fiction, unless you're building upon that. And whenever I say building, you're really making sure that every person or every notion is being used for another development or a study or a research, and even in other areas of expertise. People that have, they're qualified and they want to take a story or take something and make something out of it. So some people, they do that also. So here upon this, imagine the same daughter grows and takes decision. Most people are open. In a country, whenever a country situates themselves, they have to be open somehow in a broadened sense. I can say an open-minded, right, country. But then they all have their own reserved thoughts or their own reserved values. And then we all have the notions of how we apply them, from governments to schools to institutions to places where we acquire knowledge and where we actually put information and notions forward. So imagine that same daughter decides that to get married. A lot of people value in a marriage when it happens being virgin or not. I will not talk about this in much, but whenever a woman and a man decide that there's virginity involved, a lot of people relate it to religion. So I will keep it as short and sweet and say I believe it's more based on religion, right? I think people out of custom and out of good faith keep it for religion, their connection to God, their connection, excuse me, to somebody else. If you're a bit more open-minded, then some people see it from another, and then we can talk a bit more. But for the moment, that's not the purpose of this story. But I had to say it based that the daughter has to do her life. So wishing that that person builds her life, and that's her narrative, builds her life in a direction that doesn't make her have that relationship repeat itself, right? If the other person's garbage and something went wrong, right? We don't want that. So using all tools and all notions, we want this to be very significant, and it becomes significant for a person. And then that becomes who that person is, part of them. And then you see people that can believe upon that or have a sense that they betray others or they betray their own selves, right? But you don't have to stop and just be bothersome. If you did something or betrayed, then sometimes people go and, they have a sense of, they betrayed my own self, I betrayed whatever it is, people, you kind of have to turn in circles and then you kind of find your way, right? So that's another tools in psychiatry. We have that in fiction as we have that in truth, right? So wishing upon this that people can enjoy whenever others perceive us as one specific person, it gives us a well-being. But when we think of ourselves becomes excessively important. I'm a Canadian citizen, and by laws, when I was doing all my work, it passed from Canadian to American. And truthfully, I exposed how, and I explained how I grew up, right? So it's very North American. If I have somebody as a Hispanic person and I don't want to attack, in my narrative, sometimes we go and have expressions, sometimes it's less, right? People say less. But if an Hispanic would come to North American, we have some experiences are very, very different. We've built our own knowledge and we've built our own experiences differently. So somebody resenting me isn't logical. The same for an American. Imagine the American can talk English, they've gone to school, they have a lot of knowledge, and they're like, hold on, who's that person? They think themselves so much. And you have that. And then I'm there and I'm like, of course, right? It's me. But I think myself enough. It's not that it's above. If I go above the law, above the law, I think, there's moments in life, if you have that, then you have that. If you don't, then you don't. So given upon that, imagine the American, right? He'd be like, do I have to resent that person? We wish not. Resentment is something sometimes people sense, right? So in this narrative, we can think that among the daughter and the mother, there's a sense of resentment. And upon that, we don't want that to occur. A lot of people in relationship, they have to kind of bridge themselves and know when things work together, when things work for them, and then when really it doesn't truthfully move in the good direction, and also not stop somebody from loving or living. So the very simple notions here, I can explain how it affects your nerves, right? I truthfully think that neurologists and psychiatrists can say, your nerves definitely do alter if you don't have specific people around, or if you haven't had specific people connect to you or have a good notion of communication, or just, if people don't have that. And I do say this, if it's a fictional story, it's fiction. But if it's truthful, then it becomes very, very much different. I have to say this also in every development. When I was developing, when I was working, when I was doing much, I would say it to people, I'm in production, or I'm writing, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or I'm looking for a job in this field because somehow I'd like to be in this field, to see people, to meet people, just, get conversations going. And then when I was an actress, I was an actress. If I work as an actor in one production, it was great. If I wasn't working, then you have other people working, or, if they have body doubles, or whatever agreement there is, it doesn't go against myself. Whenever it did, I was very much well spoken, and then use a few expressions to state what wasn't I comfortable with and what isn't the law. Obviously, when you're an owner, you develop and you want things to be very much clear, and then he moves on. Right? Because some people would say, oh, I can easily, take her down because I took all these people, use all this logic, so it all becomes like variables and people algorithms of people, they like her, then they didn't like her. They took this person, so they all analyze, and it's very intelligent, right? And we took her, and that's how, people sometimes do between a mother and a daughter, right? There's relationship that have been very much, and I use this as one of the core relationship, and then you see how they develop among others, right? And some people are kinder and some people are less kind. They're less thoughtful. So upon this, I must wish that people can use their good well-being. Remember, wherever place you were born shapes you. So if you go to another country, don't take it wrongfully. There's specific things that were really imposed there. And then those that travel much, those that gain from others, they learn from every place. So sometimes it is true. I can, say it for myself. Sometimes we go and kind of bump heads because we have our mindset, and people would be like, oh, can you learn from this place? And we have. But then we have to follow the right direction, right? But there's always going to be those discussions. So trying to make it clear, if there's a business, for me it's a business, right? You want people assessing enough information as a client, and people that make it, rather, they're in the industry of entertainment, they're going to love it. If, right, they own companies, they're going to love it. They're reshaping their minds, their thoughts. They might say, you know what, I'll go to this country or I'll go this place and let's discover something else. And I remember Jennifer said that, or I remember in Thunder, so you remember that? And somehow you pick it up and you're like, yeah, true, true, true. So wishing upon that, people can have their own sense of sparkle, right? It's almost like it sparkles your being. So wishing upon that it makes it easier to understand. And obviously we've used a narrative that is very much simple. We try to dismantle in simple manner so people don't think it's too short, but it's not. Although it's complicated, if you have to sit with your daughter, that's another discussion, because it takes your own time. It takes your own observation to see. What is it that I resented? What is it that you resented? What is it that we agree upon? What is it what was said? What wasn't said? So all those development becomes something that takes time and time. So that's not a comedy. A comedy is once we make it. Whenever we make the story, that's much more funny. But when it isn't, then it's not. So wishing upon people can, as I said, use their own sense of sparkle in their being and make things happen for themselves in that. And also remember, there's specific that you don't have to resent. If you were not born, imagine I'm Hispanic origin, right? Imagine a story. I go to China and I want to pretend that I'm Chinese. And then you have this girl who's really Chinese. And people will be like, that's odd, because we have a sense of whom we are. So we don't want to forget that. I wouldn't want a person feeling uncomfortable when it's not the case. We cherish moments, we cherish people, we cherish cultures, but we bring them to a sparkle being without overcompensating, overly being distraught, having a sense of distraught that we don't have this sense of respect. I always saw that in my parents. My parents were from one origin, they were truly born there. They were not only there. My parents grew up, they study abroad. They're really people a bit like myself. I kind of see myself a bit in them, and then we had very different stories, right? So I believe that for them, they're specific that I didn't see from their perspective. and they didn't see. So we kind of have to argue. And I use my parents as anybody can use their own parents and kind of make their own understanding. So wish upon that. Obviously, there's always going to be people that have others in other places. For myself, I do say upon governments sending a specific law on boyfriend or girlfriends or any development, the government must respect all laws that I've put forward from lawyers to psychiatrists. So that's not a mention here. It was never something that I have to mention. But if I have to say one small comment for any person out there, there's specific approaches that we have. And then it has to be that way. So wish upon that some people have their good sparkle of being, and wishing that if you're doing a motion picture or you're doing a video, some people are authors and they really take on things, or some people just like to paint. Some people, they go to companies, every day they have to go from one company to the other, and they take a coffee and they think, how can it be nicer? What color? What will make me feel more? So take it as it goes and enjoy what you do. Thank you and have a good day. Bye bye.